Ferrari just walked into a trap of their own making at the Austrian Grand Prix, and Lewis Hamilton was the one who pulled the curtain back. After weeks of hype about a new engine package and upgraded fuel, the team didn't just lose, they were exposed in a way that makes you question whether they can ever catch Mercedes. Lewis didn't sugarcoat it, he said the quiet part out loud. Ferrari's straight line speed is still broken, and the fix, it's not coming anytime soon. By the end of this, you'll understand the hidden engineering flaw that's been sabotaging Charles Leclerc and Lewis himself, and why a near crash with a Mercedes Jr. almost turned into a disaster. But the biggest question remains, can Ferrari survive the next few races before this so-called miracle upgrade arrives? Or will the championship slip away before we even get to summer break? And here's what nobody is talking about. Telemetry data from China revealed something so alarming that it rewrites everything you thought you knew about Ferrari's engine. We've got the numbers. Now, I've been following Formula One long enough to know that when a team rolls into a race weekend with a swagger and then leaves with their tail between their legs, there's always more to the story. Austria was supposed to be the turning point. I mean, think about it. Ferrari had just won in Barcelona. Not a fluke win, a genuine, dominant performance that made everyone, including me, think maybe, just maybe, the red cars had finally cracked the code. They introduced a fresh engine package, which included upgraded Shell fuel that supposedly unlocked better combustion. The paddock buzz was all about how the gap to Mercedes was about to shrink dramatically. Sources inside the team, according to reports, were quietly confident that they'd be fighting for pole position and the win. But then Friday practice happened and the cracks started to show. Qualifying wasn't terrible. They managed to get both cars into strong grid positions. But on Sunday, the race unfolded like a slow-motion heartbreak. Lewis Hamilton, who has been the standard-bearer for Ferrari's revival, finished fifth. Charles Leclerc, who many consider the fastest qualifier on the grid, ended up eighth. Eighth! That's not a typo, and the way it happened is what makes this so concerning. It wasn't a strategy blunder or a bad pit stop, it was the car itself betraying them on the straights, lap after lap like clockwork. After the checkered flag, Hamilton stood in front of the cameras and said something I haven't heard a Ferrari driver say so openly in years. He admitted, without any deflection, that Ferrari's Achilles heel remains straight-line speed. He didn't blame the tires or the wind or the phase of the moon. He pointed directly at the engine's performance deficit compared to Mercedes. What struck me was how calm he was, like a man who has accepted a harsh truth and wants everyone else to accept it too. He even added that the next major power upgrade is still some time away. That's code for don't hold your breath. Now, you might be thinking, okay, so they're down on power, big deal. But here's where it gets genuinely fascinating and honestly a little scary for anyone wearing red. The problem isn't just about missing a few horsepower. It's a phenomenon engineers call superclipping, and it nearly caused a crash in Austria that could have been catastrophic. Superclipping is exactly what it sounds like, only worse. Every hybrid Formula One car has a battery that deploys electrical energy to give the engine an extra kick, especially on long straights. But that energy isn't infinite. At some point, the battery runs out of usable deployment and the car hits a virtual wall. The power drops off sharply. Every team experiences some degree of clipping, but Ferrari's version, according to telemetry analysis shared by insiders, is in a league of its own. During the Austrian Grand Prix, Mercedes Jr. driver Kimi Antonelli, who was in a customer car, mind you, not even the factory team, was bearing down on Charles Leclerc down the main straight. What happened next, according to eyewitness accounts and data traces, is the kind of thing that keeps race engineers up at night. Leclerc's Ferrari, which had been accelerating strongly, suddenly lost momentum in the middle of the straight as if someone had thrown an anchor out the back. Antonelli, caught off guard by the sudden speed differential, had to take evasive action to avoid slamming into the gearbox of the Ferrari. It was a near miss that didn't make the main broadcast headlines, but for those of us watching the sector times and onboard data, it was a massive red flag. This wasn't just a power deficit, it was a dangerous performance characteristic. You can't race safely if your car becomes a rolling blockade at the most critical part of the track. And if you think that's an isolated incident, let me take you back to Shanghai earlier this season, because that's where the smoking gun was first uncovered. Telemetry data from the Chinese Grand Prix sprint race revealed that Lewis Hamilton reportedly lost around 40 miles per hour at the end of the back straight once the electrical deployment stopped assisting the engine.
40 miles per hour. To put that in perspective, imagine cruising on the highway and suddenly your car drops speed like you slammed into a wall of molasses, while the car behind you keeps charging at full tilt. Mercedes, in the same situation, lost only 29 miles per hour. That 11 miles per hour difference doesn't sound enormous on paper, but in a braking zone, it translates to a huge closing rate and a massive disadvantage when defending position. Austria's speed trap numbers confirmed the same pattern. Mercedes consistently posted higher terminal velocities than Ferrari, lap after lap. These figures are measurable, repeatable, and deeply embedded within the car's hybrid power delivery system. And this is where I have to pause.
Little personal opinion. I've covered this sport long enough to have a healthy skepticism about miracle fixes, and the way Ferrari handled this Austria upgrade reminds me of past eras when the team would bring a promised step forward that turned out to be more of a tiptoe. The upgrade they introduced in Austria, the one that was supposed to shrink the gap, delivered an estimated gain of 6 to 8 horsepower. 6 to 8. I'm sorry, but that's like bringing a toothpick to a sword fight and calling it a weapon upgrade. When your overall deficit is believed to be somewhere between 40 and 45 horsepower, a single-digit bump is not going to transform your Sunday afternoons. Hamilton's post-race comments effectively confirmed that the update failed to touch the core problem. It was a marginal efficiency tweak, not the fundamental fix the team desperately needs. And this brings me to the real engineering riddle that makes this story so compelling. The issue inside that Ferrari power unit isn't just about squeezing more peak horsepower out of the combustion engine. It's about the entire hybrid ecosystem, how the internal combustion engine, the battery, the energy recovery system, and the electrical deployment strategy all dance together. According to multiple technical analysts who study the telemetry signatures, Ferrari's hybrid system appears less efficient at harvesting energy under braking and deploying it seamlessly during acceleration. Think of it like a smartphone with a battery that charges slowly and drains unpredictably when you need it most. The Mercedes system, by contrast, seems to manage its state of charge like a perfectly balanced bank account, delivering consistent power all the way to the end of the straight. Fixing that kind of imbalance isn't a matter of tweaking a fuel map or adding a few new engine modes. It requires changes to the system architecture, recalibration of the energy management software, and possibly even hardware revisions inside the turbocharger or motor generator units. These are complex engineering tasks that don't get solved with a minor mid-season update. And this is exactly why Ferrari's leadership, according to reports, views the next major upgrade, the one still in development, as the real game changer, not the Austria package. Which, of course, opens a whole new set of questions. What exactly is coming in that bigger upgrade, and will it be enough? Well, internal sources claim that Ferrari is working on a second, much more substantial power unit step expected later in the season, likely after the summer break. The centerpiece of this package is rumored to be a revised turbocharger design capable of delivering significantly more peak power and, crucially, more efficient energy recovery to feed the battery. The engineers are apparently targeting a large chunk of the remaining horsepower deficit with this single change. Unlike the Austria package, which focused mostly on combustion efficiency and the fuel formulation, the upcoming upgrade aims directly at the root causes of the super clipping misery. It sounds promising, but let me add a note of reality here. I've learned over the years that when teams talk about future upgrades in vague, optimistic terms, you should always read the fine print. Even if the new turbo delivers everything they hope, integrating it into a complex hybrid system without triggering new reliability concerns or drivability quirks is a monumental task, and the clock is ticking because the championship doesn't wait. Now, before we get too deep into the engineering weeds, let's look ahead to Silverstone, because that's where this narrative takes another twist. The British Grand Prix presents a fascinating test case. The circuit features the famous Hangar Straight and the run down to Copse, both of which will punish any straight-line speed weakness. But Silverstone also boasts some of the fastest, most demanding corners on the calendar: Maggots, Beckett's, and Chapel, a sequence that rewards aerodynamic efficiency, chassis balance, and driver commitment more than raw engine grunt. This is where Ferrari has been genuinely excellent all season. The SF25, according to aerodynamicists who study the flow structures, has one of the most stable and predictable platforms in high-speed corners. The team has reportedly improved overall performance by 7 to 8 tenths of a second since the car's launch, with gains coming from floor upgrades, front wing geometry, and suspension kinematics. Tire management, too, has been a standout strength, which was a key reason they triumphed in Barcelona. So, at Silverstone, while the red cars might bleed time on the straights, they could claw much of it back through the corners. It creates a fascinating push-pull dynamic that might just make them dark horses for a podium, especially if the weather turns typically British and introduces some chaos. And this is where my cautious optimism creeps in.
I've seen enough of Ferrari's chassis performance this year to believe that their championship hopes are not entirely chained to the power unit. When the track layout emphasizes cornering ability, aerodynamic consistency, and the gentle treatment of the Pirelli rubber, Leclerc and Hamilton can still mix it up with the very best. Hamilton's racecraft in particular, his ability to manage tires and extract lap time from an imperfect car, could be the safety net Ferrari needs while waiting for the horsepower cavalry. But make no mistake, the stretch of races before that second upgrade is a minefield. After Silverstone, we head to Spa, the cathedral of speed, where long full-throttle sections will expose that straight-line deficit with zero mercy. Then comes Hungary, a tight, twisting circuit that should suit the Ferrari chassis beautifully, but still features a couple of straights where you can be a sitting duck. Hamilton made it crystal clear in his post-race comments that the real solution isn't arriving immediately. The team has to survive this sequence with its current limitations. If they can bank solid points, steal a podium or two, and avoid the kind of reliability niggles that often plague upgraded engines, they might still be within striking distance when the turbocharger package arrives. But if the deficit proves too much,
Punishing at Spa, or if the superclipping rears its head in a critical overtaking situation, the championship battle could start to slip through their fingers like sand. One thing I keep coming back to, and I think it's worth saying out loud, is that Hamilton's honesty might actually be the most valuable asset Ferrari has right now. Not so long ago, this team was notorious for a culture of denial and internal politics, where admitting a fundamental weakness felt like a cardinal sin. Hearing a 7-time world champion stand there and calmly diagnose the problem without flinching, that's a sign of a maturing organization. But it also puts immense pressure on the engineers back in Maranello. Hamilton has effectively laid down a public challenge. Here is our Achilles heel, now go fix it. And the response from the technical department, according to insiders, has been a mix of grim acknowledgement and a determination to deliver the bigger upgrade ahead of schedule if possible. Whether that's realistic or just wishful thinking remains to be seen. In the meantime, the superclipping phenomenon will continue to be the ghost haunting every long straight. The near miss between Antonelli and Leclerc in Austria was a stark reminder that this isn't just a performance problem, it's a safety concern. If a car suddenly decelerates in the middle of a flat-out zone, the closing speeds can catch drivers out before they have time to react. The FIA's technical delegates are reportedly aware of the severity of Ferrari's clipping and are monitoring the situation, though no regulation changes have been proposed. Still, it adds an extra layer of tension to every race where the red cars are fighting in the pack. And that's the thing about this season. It's shaping up to be a war of incremental gains. Mercedes has its own handling quirks to dial out, Red Bull's advantage has fluctuated, McLaren has thrown away points with operational errors. So Ferrari's power unit saga is just one piece of a much larger, messy, unpredictable puzzle. That's why I remain cautiously entertained, if not entirely convinced. The upcoming races will tell us everything we need to know about the Scuderia's resilience. If they arrive at Silverstone, embrace the circuit's cornering demands, and somehow minimize the damage on the straights, I'll start to believe that this championship fight has real legs. But if we see a repeat of Austria, with the cars sliding backward through the field while the engines wheeze at the end of every straight, then all the brave talk about the future upgrade will feel hollow. Because in Formula One, tomorrow's promise doesn't score you points today. The field is too competitive now to afford a long period of vulnerability. And speaking of vulnerability, let's circle back to the human element, because that's where the best stories live. Charles Leclerc's face after that Austrian race told its own tale. This is a driver who only a few years ago was being hailed as a future champion, a qualifying genius who could drag a subpar car to pole positions by sheer will. Seeing him mired in 8th place, unable to fight, must have been a gut punch. Hamilton, meanwhile, cut a figure of resigned frustration, not boiling with anger, but carrying the weight of someone who knows exactly what's missing and can't conjure it out of thin air. The dynamic between these two will be fascinating to watch over the next few months. Both are fierce competitors, yet both seem to have accepted the reality of the situation while working behind the scenes to push the team forward. That kind of internal alignment is rare and could be a secret weapon if the technical group delivers. But pressure has a way of straining even the strongest bonds, especially if the results don't come. I'll leave you with this thought. The next chapter of Ferrari's season will be defined not by horsepower, but by patience. The team has bet heavily on a turbocharger redesign that could reshape their entire competitive trajectory. The risk is that by the time it arrives, the story might already be written. Silverstone, Spa, Hungary, these 3 races are a survival test. And as any fan of this brutal, beautiful sport knows, survival is never guaranteed. The data from Shanghai is out there, the Austrian near miss is on the record, and Hamilton's words still echo through the paddock. The question now is whether Ferrari can turn that raw honesty into something tangible before the championship door slams shut. According to reports, the engineers in Maranello are burning the midnight oil, poring over dyno simulations and energy recovery maps, fully aware that the next headline could be one of redemption or another painful reality check. One source even claimed that the late-season upgrade might be pulled forward if testing milestones are hit ahead of schedule, though that's a high-risk strategy with cost cap implications and reliability unknowns. So, call me a skeptic, call me a cautious optimist. I find myself genuinely curious to see how this unfolds. It's rare to get such a transparent look under the hood of a top team's inner turmoil, and the fact that it's coming from the drivers themselves makes it all the more compelling. The clock is ticking, the straights are long, and somewhere in the hybrid system's code, a few extra tenths per lap are waiting to be unleashed. Whether Ferrari can find them in time is the story that will either define their resurgence or become another chapter in the long book of nearly but not quite.